Hello, welcome back. We're going to spend some time today talking about wholeness, wholeness and forgiveness. And the title of this discussion is It's All About You. Yeah, it is. It's all about you. Stick around till the end, which of course you're always invited to do. And you'll see exactly what I mean by this. I don't mean, by the way, of course, that it's all about you in a completely selfish, self-centered, egocentric sense. Yeah, no, not that at all. What we're doing here today is we're wrapping up chapter 11, section 3, From Darkness to Light. This is a section of the text that has quite a lot to say about who we travel with as our companions. And you'll remember if you saw the last video that Jesus refers to what this course calls dark companions. And they're not necessarily dark people or those with whom you have many disagreements, like an opposition political party or something like that. That's not what he's talking about. What he's talking about is the place where we appear to find ourselves in the world, traveling with dark companions of separation, anxiety, fear, deep loneliness, yeah, anger and rage, blame, guilt, lots and lots of guilt, things like that. We have within our mind our inner teacher whom we're invited to connect with so that we may travel with a mighty companion rather than with the dark ones. Because as we find, the dark companions aren't even there. They're not real. They're simply imagined. We made them up. Power in that statement is having made them, we can set them aside. We can unmake them. We do so, of course, under the guidance of our inner teacher. And because people pop in and out of this in any video series, it's worth repeating that your inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, can go by any name you choose to give it. And here I am using the third person pronoun it. It is not a dude, although we often use the masculine pronouns he, him. It really doesn't make any difference what you call your inner teacher. Your inner teacher is not a human being, neither male nor female in that sense. Your inner teacher is part of our mind, our mind. That part that goes by many names, even here in A Course in Miracles. One of the most common is the voice for God, and one that this particular section of the text mentions is Comforter with a capital C. The Holy Spirit is your comforter, this part of your mind that speaks of who you are. If only you'll take a couple of seconds out of your wildly hectic day and listen to it. We're always invited to do that. The Holy Spirit is our comforter. And here in paragraph 6, Jesus uses what I think is a very helpful analogy of a temple that is made ready for us. And what is going on is our inner teacher awaits us. The Holy Spirit waits for us. How do we enter the temple? By sharing God's love with our brother. That's how we enter, by extending love, by forgiving the Son of God, and extending the miracle of true forgiveness to every single living thing and everything else that appears that is not completely and wholly joyous. That's how we enter. And here's the thing. Forgiveness is either total or it's not at all. We'll say plenty more about forgiveness in a few minutes. It's either total or it's not at all. We have to forgive totally and be whole and holy in the temple, in a manner of speaking, or we won't know that we're there. And here, running around in the world amok with our to-do list and our debt, if you have that, with all of the things that we moan and complain about in life, we're actually in the temple. We're at home in God, and we don't realize it. How do we realize it? Forgive truly and completely. Completely. I've said before, apparently it's going to come out again. This course invites us to a complete perceptual 180. We're turning everything right side up. The way we see the world, ourselves, all phenomena is completely backwards. It is 180 degrees backwards. So we're flipping our upside down perception right side up. It is quite upside down as it is. This is what this course is designed to do, is to help us completely clarify our perception so that we see things as they are, not the way we've made them. This world of 8 billion seemingly independent and self-existent, self-sustaining survival units, 8 billion plus individuals bearing the artificial label of human being. I mean, when you think about it, all names are simply labels that are made up. So when we appear to be here, we have to admit to ourselves, when we're willing to do it, and maybe that will be right now for you, that we're not seeing things as they are. It's completely backwards, and maybe you're sick of this round of suffering, and maybe, in a manner of speaking, you want to go home. Yeah. You want the peace of God, which deep down we all want. We simply may not admit it at the time. And of course, there are plenty of people that would never admit that. There are, of course, billions of people that will never see this video and will never pick up the course. And there are plenty of people that won't do anything about spirituality and their spiritual path in this lifetime. So be it. You're here, and it's about you. And that's what matters. In our mind, we can accept wholeness and our oneness with our brother and bless our brother. In our mind. This is where the action lies. This is where forgiveness takes place. How do we clarify our perception and learn to see things as they are? Well, we do so through the practice of true forgiveness. I'd like to spend the remainder of our time today talking about true forgiveness because it is the practical foundational centerpiece of A Course in Miracles. It really, truly is. And it's very misunderstood. So it is one of the subjects that bears repetition because it's something that we're invited to do all the time. The way the world sees forgiveness is different than the way we're taught about it in A Course in Miracles. Shocker, right? A Course in Miracles has as its primary foundational teaching, there is no world. So naturally, it's going to posit something completely different than what we've been conditioned to believe. Now, here in the world, forgiveness is vastly misunderstood, and it is not real and true forgiveness most of the time because it's a business transaction, a quid pro quo, like a business transaction, an exchange of labor for money, or like for like in terms of services, or an in-kind exchange, or something like that. Now, frequently, what goes on here in the world is the sense of separation, the only error. The only error is the error of separation. There is no separation of any kind. But here in the world, what passes as forgiveness keeps this false idea firmly in place. It keeps separation firmly in place. And here's what I mean. And I'd like to use the example of my own mother. Now, I've talked about her in the past in some of these videos. I'm going to speak about her in a couple of different ways and talk about forgiveness in a couple of different ways here. So, first of all, she was a classic example of forgiveness as the world sees it, that firmly maintains a sense of separation. Firmly maintains. Now, I'm using the past tense because she passed away in 2016, which I'll say some more about, actually. So, the deal with her, and I am sure that many of you can relate, whether it's your own mother or a parent or a friend or an ex-partner or a current partner, or someone has done this to you. And perhaps you've done it to someone else, and maybe you're doing it now. If you recognize yourself in this, listen to the message of our inner teacher, who will tell you what to do. My mom was an expert at maintaining a sense of separation while stating that she was forgiving me. So as a kid, as normal kids go, I sometimes was in trouble. I won't say often, but often enough. Can you relate? And I was supposedly forgiven by my mother, but here's where it was not true forgiveness. The statement could have gone this way. And the overall gist of it was, okay, well, I forgive you now your transgressions against me. But if you ever do it again, I'm going to wipe your birthday off the calendar for all time. And this is going to befall you. And this consequence is going to befall you. And this and that. And I'll make sure you squeal. So never do it again. Now, as course students, we may be able to see what's wrong with that. Well, everything, actually. It's not forgiveness at all because it maintains a sense of separation. In a situation like this, there is a hierarchy that is imposed and that is kept firmly in place. One deigns or stoops to forgive another who is lowly, scum, who has transgressed. And this sense of hierarchy, where one person who is deigned to forgive and stoop to forgive this lowlife, maintains a sense of superiority and lords it over them. Can anyone relate to that? Oh, yeah. She was an expert at remembering things that happened on October 27th, 1984 at 5:18 p.m. and 15 seconds, which were then, as the years grew on, embellished and continued to remind me of such things over and over and over again. maintaining a sense of separation between forgiven and the one who has supposedly stooped in their magnificence, in their eminent high and mightiness to forgive. Can anyone relate? Yeah, that was what I grew up with. So fast forward to adulthood. I want to spend some time talking about my own biggest and to date largest and most significant forgiveness practice of this lifetime. And quite naturally, it was my own mother that I'm talking about here. Now, I do this in the context of questions and comments that have come up recently here on this video series, where there have been a number of folks who have stated that they don't know if their forgiveness practice is actually working. It's common enough where it's not certain that any of this is working because no one's acknowledging that I'm doing it and that I don't feel any differently for that reason. And it's a very common experience on the path. So let me spend some time talking about my own experience with my own mother. And my hope is that this will give you some hope. Yeah. And that if there is a misunderstanding here on what true forgiveness is and what it constitutes and the benefits of it, that may be cleared up. And as always, if that's not the case and you have further questions, please feel welcome to leave them here. So when I started studying A Course in Miracles, it was in 2013 when I bought the big blue book and picked it up and began to pour through it. And it became really clear to me right away that there was a significant amount of resistance on my part to the idea of forgiveness. Can anyone relate? My thought, when I thought of my mother, with whom I had a rather strained relationship. Now, as an adult, after decades of forgiveness as the world sees it, and lots of verbal and emotional abuse, she was a raging alcoholic up until nearly the time of her death. So it's a lot. If you've been through that, or if you're going through that, you'll clearly know, likely you know someone who has, if you haven't, it's a lot. So she was the person that most popped into my mind when I started picking up this material. And I thought to myself often, what the hell? Do I really have to forgive her? Yes. Yes, if you want the peace of God. This is what Jesus means when he tells us that we cannot leave anything in a dark, hidden corner. We have to include everyone, or we won't know we're at home in God. We won't know we're in the temple, like we just talked about a few minutes ago. If we don't forgive truly and completely, we won't know. That's why it's either total or it's not at all. And that made perfect sense to me. And I knew it. So I began to start with what I could start with. Now, here's the thing about forgiveness. It's all about you. It is in your mind that the changes take place. They may not appear to affect the outside world at all. It's about you and your own joy and your own happiness in your mind. It is not dependent on anyone else acknowledging your forgiveness. It is not dependent on their even knowing about it. Here's the deal. It is done in your mind. So with my mother, I was at a point where we could not have a productive adult conversation with one another. And I had set some very healthy boundaries, which, by the way, you're welcome to do and still forgive, as you're about to see. I had set a very healthy boundary of, okay, you're toxic if you're going to speak to me in this unconstructive, juvenile way, right? If you're going to abuse me, I'm not going to speak to you. So until such time as you can speak to me like an adult, after decades of verbal and emotional abuse, I'm not going to put up with it anymore. No more. If you want to speak to me, here's what I expect. And I knew that that was necessary, so that was in place. And I went to work forgiving her. What does this mean? I did not call her. You don't have to. You don't have to. It's not about mending a relationship. People often think that it is. It does not have to be. If you're directed by your inner teacher to mend a relationship, then do that. But do as you're directed. My directive, keep that healthy barrier up. You need it. And forgive, forgive, forgive. You don't have to call the person that you're forgiving. You don't have to write them a long, tearful letter. You don't have to text them or send them an email. You don't have to sit down for a 3 to 4 hour uncomfortable, tear-jerking conversation. You may be instructed that you don't have to mend the relationship at all. Forgiveness happens in your own mind. So this is what I did. I went to work forgiving her. Everything, blanket forgiveness, leaving nothing unturned. So what began to happen? Our relationship didn't change. It remained standoffish until the day I discovered that she had died. We didn't speak for the last couple of years of her life. And in that time, I grew much, much happier because I was actively forgiving. True forgiveness had nothing to do with her acknowledgement that I was doing it. She did not know. People don't have to know you're doing it. So it's not necessarily about getting acknowledgement from somebody. In fact, that's not what it's about. It's about you. It's about you and your mind, your own happiness, your own peace of mind. True forgiveness acknowledges that the separation never occurred. Your brother is you. There has never been any separation of any kind at any time, at any point, anywhere. So we acknowledge as we look past the outer form to the content. We're, in essence, forgiving what our brother did not do. The separation never occurred. Remember, this course is about flipping our perception right side up. We think it did here in the world, and we think that there are 8 billion screaming, separate, self-sustaining survival units, ravaging individuals. True forgiveness acknowledges that's not so. There is only perfect oneness. Your brother never did anything to you. Now, here in this world where it may appear that they did, where there were decades of abuse, perhaps, it's okay to have a healthy adult boundary. But from that healthy adult boundary, it is 100% possible to forgive and forgive truly. This has been, to date, the greatest forgiveness lesson of my life, and it seems quite likely that it will be. So perhaps some of you can relate to that. True forgiveness is an acknowledgement of our oneness. It's looking beyond what appeared to happen on the surface of life to our true core, our essence. Now, if you feel that you're unable to do that at the time, that's perfectly understandable. It is. It's perfectly understandable because there are many situations of egregious abuse here in this world, whether it's in a relationship with a family member or a domestic partner or a war, an international conflict. There's a lot of bad stuff going on. So if you find today that you're unable to forgive a certain person, start with what you can forgive. Forgive the dog for going pee on the carpet. Really. Forgive yourself for stubbing your toe on a rug this morning. If that's what comes up for you to forgive, do that. You want to know what? It's exactly the same as forgiving your own abusive mother. It's exactly the same as forgiving all wars and genocides and every single violent act that's ever appeared to have been perpetrated on this spinning ball of rock and chaos. It's exactly the same. There is no order of difficulty in miracles. The first sentence of the text, this is what Jesus means. Every act of forgiveness is equally powerful. Do what you're called to do and understand as you do it, it's all about you. It's about your mind. Will other people notice? Maybe not. My mom didn't notice. She paid absolutely no attention to what was going on in my mind, which was revolutionary, really, a giant, giant 180. The 180 that we're invited to perform for ourselves. Now, it may be that people will notice, but your own happiness and your own evaluation of your forgiveness should never depend on what others say or do, or acknowledge or don't acknowledge. It's about you. And the question that you might ask yourself, if you've been doing this for a while, it's useful, I find, to look back on who you were when you began your practice and take a look at who you are now. Are you, in fact, calmer? Are you more loving? Are you more forgiving? Are you more loving? Do the same things bother you that used to bother you? That's a good measuring stick sometimes, because we can look at things that years ago or even last week would have caused us to fly off the handle in rage. And when we find that the same thing happens to us after some work with forgiveness, and it doesn't even faze us, it doesn't even register. In fact, it's as though it never happened. Didn't. You'll be able to say, oh, perhaps this is working after all. And whenever you're in doubt, ask your inner teacher for guidance. It is under his guidance that we do forgiveness. Each forgiveness opportunity looks different on the outside, because in one sense we're forgiving somebody here, we're forgiving a situation here, we might be forgiving a war here, we might be forgiving ourselves for stubbing our toe on the carpet on a rug, and it hurts, and maybe there's a bruise or something, and we wish to forgive the communication mechanism. Just saying. A very important point here in all of this is, while you're forgiving under the guidance of your inner teacher, please do not forget to forgive yourself. We're the dreamer here. This is a dream. We're the dreamer. So forgiveness is righting our perception. Forgive yourself for dreaming this. Do not neglect to forgive yourself. That is common enough. We see it in play all the time here in the world, where someone finds it easy to forgive everyone but themselves. Forgive yourself to release this all to your inner teacher. Let go of all of the unconscious guilt. It's unconscious. When we experience pain and hardship in the world, that is an opportunity for forgiveness. That pain and hardship is symbolic of this deep unconscious guilt. From what? From the supposed separation from God, which never occurred. As we truly forgive, it can be very helpful to state that the separation never occurred. Ideas leave not their source. We are the thought of God. In other words, an idea, which has not left its source, capital S. The more we forgive what appears on the surface of the world outside, the more we recognize our essential oneness, the quicker our perception becomes clarified, and you may find yourself feeling more peaceful, calmer, more loving. And I hope that my own example with my forgiveness of my own mother is helpful to you, because if you need a healthy boundary while you do this work, that's something you can put in place. Remember, it's not about whether someone acknowledges you or not. It's about you and your relationship with your inner teacher. It's part of our mind. So in this sense, it's very much about you. Forgiveness takes place in the mind. This entire course operates at the level of the mind. You'll notice it's not about going to the gym. If you like to do that, do that. It's not about your job or earning money or bringing in more money. It's about your mind. It's about changing our perception, turning it right side up so that truth may dawn of itself. And in order for that to happen, that's awakening, by the way, when our perception is fully, completely clarified, truth dawns of itself. We're awakened. We're at home in God. That's enlightenment. We must forgive truly and completely before that. That's why this is our practice. So we'll say plenty more about this. It's worth having a discussion that extends a little longer on this. I felt that it was helpful, and I hope that it has been, to hear about some of my own personal forgiveness experience here, because I'm a course student right along with all of you. So if you have further questions, please feel welcome to leave them here. And if you've not subscribed and joined us, we'd love to have you do so. This arrow in the corner of your screen is a subscription button. When you click or hover over that, you'll be prompted to subscribe and join us. Several videos appear per week, and as we see here, questions are always welcome. So the more hard-hitting they appear to you, the better, because there are many people worldwide who have the same question, and they could be impacted very powerfully by your willingness to ask. So those of you who have and have recently, thank you very much. And I will see you all again very soon.